Hey you guys, what's up? This is James here at Unique Perspectives. Thought I'd make another video, and this time I wanted to address pretty privilege. I actually thought it was a very fascinating topic, and I believe most of you who probably even stumbled on this, if not you're already a subscriber, you would probably know that I believe it's Ono Stefko. You know, she did a pretty privilege video maybe 2 years ago. She's pretty much associated with that concept on YouTube, and everything is like regarding that topic. It really connects to her a lot because she expressed herself. In my opinion, I like the way that she expressed herself. I don't agree with everything. I just feel like, but she was very transparent, and I think everyone who looked at her video repeatedly could appreciate the transparency. I do have some ideas and some thoughts about this concept. I guess I want to address this from not only from a general perspective of just kind of addressing the pretty privilege, but I also want to address more specifically why there are so many black women that are gravitating towards really complaining or addressing this topic. It's very interesting how you go on YouTube and you have different people of different cultures that are addressing it, but it seems like it's predominantly dominated by specifically black women. And so I kind of want to address that because I really think it's fascinating how it's the black women that seem to be addressing this more often. So I've watched a few videos within the last 2 years about this, and I've just been wanting to put my thoughts out there, and I might even make a part 2 about this, but I just wanted to address this. So I do want to encourage you to like and subscribe, and you know what? Let's get into this. So I have a few points I want to address. I don't know if I'm going to number them. So the first thing I want to address is that we men, we know already, we understand the dynamic of, I don't want to say pretty privilege necessarily, but we know the understanding of when there's a guy that is more attractive than us. You know, we kind of make our peace with it very early in our life, you know. I mean, for me, like it was like maybe between 12 and 16, I already knew like, oh, hey, this guy is taller and he's getting more attention, or this guy, you know, looks a certain way and he has these attributes, so he is getting more attention. So very early, I think most of us guys, we come to the understanding that we're not the center of the attention, you know, and then we also get rejected very frequently, even the average guy, most of us. So we kind of come and make our peace with this already. So this is why I don't believe you're gonna find too many guys that agree with this concept that there is a pretty privilege. I don't know, we kind of have to deal with it. You know, no one really cares that much about our position. If we're overweight, if we don't have a lot of money. I mean, I've had a lady actually tell me straight up like, hey, the only reason why I'm not going to be with you is because, you know, you don't make a certain amount of money. And I never told her my finances, but she figured or calculated in her mind how well I should be or could probably I'm doing based on my car and the things that she's seen. And so a lot of us guys, we're accustomed to that. That's not a big deal. So I think there are a lot of us that will not be complaining too much about this idea because we're accustomed to this. We get rejected regularly. We just learn to kind of roll with the punches and make use of what it is that we do have. If you're funny, you want to cultivate that humor, that humorous attitude that you have. If you want to go the workout route, you know, and you be identified as the guy that with the nice body, you know, I remember I did that in my early 20s. I grew up with like 3 other guys, and I noticed that they would get attention because, you know, they're all like starting to get a little taller than me. Some of them had certain elements that was very attractive to ladies. So what I did was I just like started to work out like crazy. And so that was my identity, is I was the buff guy. I was the big guy. And, you know, I appreciated it. For a lot of us guys, like we don't have the luxury of complaining about stuff like a lot of women. Not too many people care. So we kind of had to deal with it for a lot of us. And there are a lot of different communities that I could address that have different views on this kind of thing. You know, you have the red pill, blue pill, you have incels, you have MGTOW, you have all sorts of groups that have a lot of different perspectives within, I'm going to say, the male community. And, you know, we all have different views. You know, I'm more of a conservative Christian. You know, I have my own views as well. But I think all of us would agree that, you know, as a guy, you just you have to kind of roll with it. If you don't have that certain thing, you either try to compensate for it or you get left in the wind, and that's it. You know, there's really no discussion about that. We all learn to deal with rejection. And so I'm really surprised that there are so many videos that are coming out from so many ladies, and there are some still being made, and it's primarily from ladies within the black community, which I think is fascinating. I'll address that. I just think it's fascinating how there are barely any videos of men really addressing this topic, because to us it's a given, you know. If a person is attractive or taller than us, you know, let's say the next guy, we already know that he gets certain opportunities that we don't, and so we can't fix that. I can't make myself taller. I'm like average height. If a guy's 6 foot or plus, there are some ladies automatically that's going to gravitate towards him. They don't care about his character. They don't care about his integrity. They don't care about if he's, you know, resilient or, you know, all these things. They just like, hey, he's tall, I'll go with him. So for us guys, we learn that very early in our lives. And I'm not saying every woman is vain and just care about if a guy is tall. There are a lot of women that we've learned that they don't really care about the more deeper elements of a man's character, his personality, and things like that. So this is why I don't think you're going to find a lot of guys talking about this topic, because it's a given. And there are a lot of different privileges, I'm going to say, that it's not just when it comes to like being attractive or pretty, but even just being a lady. If my equivalent within my community, let's say she was my height and my size, and she was stranded in the desert on the road, and I'm stranded in the desert on the road, most likely a family that's passing by is going to pick her up rather than me. I know that. I'm a guy. They may think, hey, what if he's a killer or something like that? And so I get it. So there's privileges just being simply a woman. And then there's privileges of being all sorts of things. There's two-parent household privileges. There's a lot of privileges that come with having a man and a woman coming together, building a family, having children, and they're present in the children's lives. And the children are waking up to mom and dad, and they're going to sleep with mom and dad by their side. And so they're different privileges, but I don't want to make it seem like pretty privilege or being attractive is evil, because it exists. It exists. But I just feel like for a lot of us guys, we made our peace with it very early. We have no choice. That's one thing that was interesting. I guess the next point I'm really interested to know, and maybe some of you guys can comment, I'm very interested in this, is why are there so many black women? Why are there so many sisters in our community addressing this topic? It just seems like, I almost feel like there are a lot of insecurities coming out when it comes to this topic. It's strange because it's almost like I want to be attractive, therefore let me start complaining about this dynamic because I'm not getting as much attention as so-and-so. Like I said before, a lot of us guys, we are forced by our lives. We have to make peace with this very early, and I have some stories I'll probably tell in the future. But I've had to deal with that with certain family members and certain peers when they were taller or they were whatever, and there were just certain people that gravitated towards them because of those elements that they naturally possessed that I didn't. It's just interesting because I don't see a large amount of Persian women, complaining about the pretty privilege. There are some ladies that are white that have come out and talked about they're not as attractive and things like that. But I just find it fascinating how it seems like the majority of the videos are black women that are coming out. And I kind of feel like a lot of our sisters, I'm not going to say all, but a lot of our sisters are bringing in these insecurities and complaining, almost feeling entitled, like they feel like they're supposed to be getting the same attention as whoever their counterparts are, and I don't know, maybe they're trying to compete with white Caucasian women, which I don't think that, we should be trying to do that. I think that you should be prioritizing basically being yourself. And I think we're really setting ourselves back when we're trying to compare ourselves to white women or whoever else. We're not designed, we have different cultures, and with that, there are often different elements of our culture. Some of us tend to be bigger or taller, like Samoan. Some of us, have certain textures of hair. Some of us have, chocolate complexions, and some of us have different complexions. And I think you're kind of setting yourself up for failure, and you're demonstrating insecurities when you're creating this ideal person that, you feel like you don't fulfill the standards of this person. And I would almost ask, why are you creating this standard if it's your friends that's being hit on more than you, or why are you looking at them as the standard? I think that's like the wrong foundation to build on. There should be, if anything, there should be an understanding that you are an individual, and just because these people are not hitting on you doesn't mean nobody likes you. In fact, I would challenge any of the ladies that are complaining that they're not getting a lot of attention to open up their inbox and show us all Instagram or TikTok and show if there's really no one actually trying to contact. I'm actually pretty convinced every single woman making a video about not being pretty enough and things like that are getting hit on regularly, but they're not going to show us that because that would go against their narrative. Which leads me to my next point, and that is having a false narrative. I don't know why it's such a popular idea within our community, and I'm going to include black men as well, to always set themselves up for failure by making themselves the victim for every single thing. And this is how I know a lot of these people are they're Democrats, I'm going to say, I don't want to get political, but there's a certain ideology, certain philosophy that is played out in certain people's minds. And you can see that based on how they react to life and how they respond to the world. And for a lot of us that are, conservative Christians, we understand that we are an individual made in the image of God. And if we want to improve on something, even myself, I go for 2-hour walks 3-4 times a week, especially before I'm going to work or whatever else, because I want to stay healthy and I want to make sure that if I need to run with my kids that I teach and things like that, I can do that. One of the mindsets I'm going to say with more conservative Christians Christian values is a lot about self-improvement and a lot about being self-accountable. If I'm not healthy and I'm picking up a lot of weight, I don't say, oh darn, those stores and those fast food places are convincing me to eat a lot and they're putting stuff in their food. My mind doesn't go that way. My mind goes into, okay, then what do I need to eat to make sure I need to improve myself? What do I need to consume to make sure I get the results that I want? And it's the same thing with this idea of pretty privilege. I know for a fact that if I go to certain countries, I might stand out more. And so maybe that's something that should be considered for some of you that are convinced that you're never gonna win when it comes to dating and things like that. It's really important, ladies, that you understand that you're designed specifically in a certain way. It's your job to position yourself in a way where you can win. So for example, if I'm having a hard time within the next 5-10 years in my country, then I may go to the Philippines, or I may go to Venezuela, or I may go to Costa Rica or somewhere. I may actually try my chances somewhere else. But if something's not working, then I'm going to try somewhere else. I'm not going to sit around and be a victim. And I feel like a lot of the pretty privileged videos, specifically coming from ladies of our culture, not all, but many, it's almost setting themselves up for failure. And it's like wallowing in this idea of being a victim. And you're not. You're a healthy individual. You live, in the United States, most of you, the West, and you have plenty of privilege. You have American privilege. We have a lot of opportunities here, and there's a lot of things that we can do to improve ourselves. Please stop playing victim. My next point is, I think there's this weird sense of entitlement for a lot of ladies, not all, but there are a lot of ladies that feel like because they're not being hit on or they're not being bombarded with a lot of attention versus their friends or their whoever else around them, that there's something wrong. Newsflash, but this has been happening throughout world history. Ladies that are attractive are going to be models. There are going to be noticed. There are people in Nigeria and other places in Africa or Mexico or Venezuela or different countries that have been discovered because they are absolutely beautiful. They have what we would call a universal attractive. It's almost as if almost any man would identify them as very attractive. And so I think that instead of saying, well, hey, this is Eurocentric features and that's the issue, it's not about that. It's not about that. It's like the person is genuinely attractive. There are women that they're not too thin and they're not too big and they're not obese and they are a healthy figure, and there are a lot of guys that are going to be attracted to them because they look visually attractive to us. If they're in a healthy place, they're in a healthy state, we're naturally going to be attracted to them. And it doesn't matter if they're white or they're Persian or black or Hispanic, whatever else, Pacific Islander. If the woman is attractive, she's attractive, period. It doesn't have to be some type of conspiracy that she has Eurocentric features and all that kind of stuff. No, it doesn't have to be that. And it doesn't have to be that she's light-skinned or something like that. It doesn't have to be that. Person is attractive, period. And again, a lot of us guys, we don't complain about this because we've already had to deal with this very early in our lives. We learned this very early. So this is not a big deal to us. Another point I wanted to bring up is this fixation that, and I addressed it in my last point, that white women seems to be the standard of beauty in the Western world. Although I don't entirely agree with that, I do think that there are some elements of truth to that. But there's a reason why. And I actually made a video about this. I may put the link in the description or after this video. But believe it or not, especially in the United States, of the white Caucasian community, our brothers and sisters that are white, they actually are about 60 to 70% of the population versus black Americans, I'm going to say, we're just 13%. So yes, there are a lot of black men that are going to look at a white Caucasian woman. We see them more than we see somebody in our culture. They outnumber us, so it's something that I feel like there should be a natural understanding that, yes, these ladies outnumber us. Of course, there's going to be opportunities for men of not only within the black community, but any community, even other white men, to date somebody that's white, a woman that's white, and they outnumber us. It's like, even statistically, it's just, I have more of an opportunity to be with somebody that outnumbers us, Becky or whoever else. And it's not because all black men hate black women. It doesn't have to be that. And actually, like I said, I made a video that kind of breaks down why. There's a lot of reasons why black men will actually lean towards being with a white Caucasian woman. And it's not the reasons you guys think. So I would encourage you guys to check that out. I share some stats that's very important. But just keep in mind, white women outnumber black men and they outnumber all of us. So yeah, they're going to have some type of influence in regards to what is found attractive. It doesn't mean that they have to be, just because they're in the majority, it doesn't mean that they have to be the standard. Yeah, the idea of just targeting an entire people group because of maybe some of our insecurities is just not fair at all. And I think that we need to be mindful that there are a lot of people, like I said, in the West, within the white Caucasian community, the people group, and they don't think like some type of weird racist, KKK crap. A lot of people that will judge you based on the contents of your character and not the color of your skin. Honestly, I'm here in California, I'm in Los Angeles, and I work all over the place, in the Valley area, in Los Angeles area, even in Orange County, and I've never had to deal with that sort of thing in my life. I'm in the Santa Monica area, you name it, Westwood, and not once have I ever had to deal with it. I've been working for over 20 years, just in different locations, working with children and families, and everyone has always been very respectful in every community, you know, Asian, white, Persian, Indian, you name it, Latin. So it's really about who people are, not, you know, judging them based on, okay, well, you're white, so therefore, you know, you think you're the standard. And there's a lot of women that it's already hard just being a woman as it is in our society. They're not thinking about, oh, I'm a white woman, I have advantages. They're not thinking like that. So I think we need to be on track when it comes to that sort of mindset. You know, I think one of the things that, you know, and this is another point, is the, I guess we'll call it colorism, and it's the whole light skin, dark skin dynamic. And I will say that one of the things I want to bring up before I get into that is that we have to keep in mind within the Black community that there are a lot of cultures that deal with this. You know, there are Latinos that deal with this. There are people that have a Pacific Islander background in regards to their culture, ethnicity, and they're dealing with that. There are people in Asia, and they deal with that as well. It's the same dynamic. So, you know, I think sometimes within the Black community, we give this impression as if we're the only ones struggling with this, but there's a lot of communities that deal with this sort of thing, the whole colorism thing. I've actually dealt with it as well. Now, one thing I think is very interesting, and maybe this will be uncomfortable to bring this up, especially for those of you in the Black community, is that all of the insults, all of the really bad, profane, all of the negative names that I've ever received has always been from Black people. It's always been from a Black person. I've never had anybody that was white or in any other community insult me because of my complexion. It has always been another Black person. Sometimes they were lighter, sometimes they were, you know, what we would call biracial mix, or sometimes they looked exactly like me, or even more chocolate than I was. And I've had a lot of people insult me. So keep in mind that a lot of the issues that we have is within our community. It's not other people, it's us in our community. And so we have to keep that in mind as well, is that we got to stop blaming other communities. We have to really work on a lot in our own community. Now, is there an issue with the whole light skin, dark skin thing? Absolutely. In my opinion, from a Christian biblical perspective, it has a lot to do with the sinful nature that we all inherited because of Adam's sin against God. So this is the issue. We inherited this nature. We are slaves to sin, according to Jesus. You know, those who practice sin are a slave to sin. That's what Jesus said. There's no way for us to sever ties with that sinful nature unless God actually severs it for us, you know, and it has to be by His grace that He severs and He changes us from the inside out. But I think it's very fascinating how a lot of the issues that we have within the Black community is in the Black community. It comes from Black people. And so it's interesting when I'm on YouTube and I'm watching a lot of my sisters within my community talking about these issues, and I don't think a lot of them are realizing that a lot of the insecurities that they're having or the rejections that they're talking about is from the Black community. It's like, oh, so it's nice to make people aware. At the end of the day, you cannot force somebody to like you just because of whatever. And it's the same thing with a lot of other people that are light complexion. I think we don't talk about this enough, but there are people I know that were rejected in school and growing up because they were light complexion. People discriminated against them because they said, hey, you're light complexion, so therefore you think you're better than us. Hey, let's beat them up. There are a lot of people that have to deal with a lot of other issues that some of us that are more, you know, chocolate, I'm going to say, we never had to deal with. And so we have to keep that in mind. There's a lot of people I know that have more of a caramel complexion. They felt like they needed to exaggerate or embellish, you know, their blackness, I'm going to say, the way that they carry themselves because they were trying to compensate for what they felt that they didn't have. Just because there are some guys that are saying, hey, I like this girl because she's lighter complexion or whatever else. Even if some guy says that, hey, so what? That's their preference. So what? What we need to do is move on. It's the same thing with me. I had to deal with plenty of ladies that they were more attracted to one of my peers, and I just had to say, okay, that's what it is, and that's it. And I think that there are a lot of us that retreat to being a victim, being sad, finding somebody to blame. Hey, you just want somebody with Eurocentric features. No, it's not always that. Maybe they're just not attracted to you. It could be that. They're just not attracted to you. And that's it. One of my next points, and this is my second to the last point, is there is an idea that's being perpetuated that there are a lot of Black men that are actively avoiding dating Black women, you know, with this whole pretty privilege thing. And I would disagree. Me, like many other Black men, we've tried to connect with a lot of black women and we were not good enough. I've had ladies make fun of me because of my hair texture within my community. I've had ladies tell me my nose is too big. I've had ladies say all sorts of crazy things, and not once have I ever had somebody that has a Persian background or Ethiopian background or Latin background or white Caucasian tell me any of those things. It was always coming from the black community. So I really want to acknowledge this, that we need to be mindful of what's happening in our community and stop blaming other people. There are plenty of guys that are interested in dating and being with a black woman within the black community, but some ladies are, and this is one of the reasons why I'm making reference to my other video. I actually cover a lot of details behind this, but there are some issues with a lot of our black women being overweight. I think it's the black woman that's the most overweight here in the West, in the United States. I mean, we have an obese issue already in the United States, but it doesn't help that it's led by black women specifically. And even though I may not agree with everything Kevin Samuels brought up, that was something he emphasized a lot, is that guys naturally look for women that are smaller than them. And so some of the ladies that I see on these videos complaining, they're bigger than me and they're complaining. And so it's just, you have to learn to help yourself if you're trying to actually succeed in the dating world. If you want to get noticed, you have to be feminine. You have to actually demonstrate that you are a lady that can be attractive, not only emotionally and intellectually and spiritually, but also physically. A lot of us guys, we don't want a woman that can probably pick us up and body slam us. We don't want that. Yeah, overall, I just feel like, I don't know, this whole pretty privilege thing, I just think it's very fascinating. I do want to end this video with, and so there's this portion of scripture that I think is very relevant to this topic, and it's actually found in Genesis chapter 29, and it really has a lot to do with the whole pretty privilege concept. It's fascinating because I committed this to memory. I felt like this was so important to talk about that I committed it to memory, but it's found in Genesis 29. I'm going to say maybe 17. There's a little portion I wanted to read. I'm going to read Genesis 29, 16 to 18. I really want to share this, and I want to just keep in mind that this is something that God has inspired in His Word, and He offered this information to us that I thought was very fascinating and relevant. Now, keep in mind, Jacob, he left his household where his father Isaac was. Isaac could barely see. Jacob actually left under some bad terms. He kind of did something that he shouldn't have done with his brother, took his birthright. So there's a lot of dialogue with that. I'm going to get straight to the nitty gritty. Jacob eventually tries to go and find a wife, and he actually finds a lovely woman named Rachel. And it turns out that Rachel actually has a sister as well. And I really want to read this out to you because I want you to know how God included this description between both sisters. Here we go. Now, Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah, and the name of the younger was Rachel. Leah had weak eyes, but Rachel had a lovely figure and was beautiful. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I will work for you for 7 years in return for your younger daughter, Rachel." Now, this is just a small portion of scripture, but I really wanted to share that because I wanted you guys to recognize that even God in His inspired word, made a distinction between 2 sisters. The older sister, Rachel, had weak eyes and there was no other description about her. But when it came to Rachel, we find out that she had a beautiful figure and she was beautiful in general. Even God inspired a different. I'm not saying that Leah was unattractive, but obviously the younger sister was more attractive than her sister. So even God made a distinction between the 2. The story gets really wild. I would like to encourage you guys to actually read this entire chapter because this story is really crazy, and it's really interesting because the father, because he can't find, I guess, a husband for the older sister, he actually tricks Jacob to even marry the older sister, and so it really becomes a really crazy drama, but definitely worth reading. But I really wanted to just make sure that you guys understand that, this has always been a part of human history of certain people being more attractive than others. And I feel like, again, for a lot of us guys, we make our peace with this very early in our lives, so this is not a big deal to us. But it's interesting how there are a lot of ladies that seem to be fixated on the idea of trying to fix something when the only thing that you really have the authority to do is work on yourself or position yourself to be in a place where there are men that are looking for women like yourself. If you are somebody that's 200-300 pounds and you are a black woman, for example, I don't know, maybe your hair texture, you wear wigs, I don't know, whatever it is you do, find the people that are attracted to women like you. Find the people, but I think that the idea of going into facilities, going into places and expecting everyone to look at you compared to, I don't know, somebody else, that's not right. That's not right. to build that expectation. And I just find it fascinating how within the black community, a lot of our ladies seem to be determined to almost force people to want to find them attractive. But for a lot of us guys, like, we've made our peace with this. We understand this is how the world works. If you have money, you're attractive. If you're tall and a certain point, 6 feet up, you're attractive. You know, if you have a nice body, you're attractive. And for a lot of ladies, it seems like they don't want to come to terms with the fact that this is how the world works. So just wanted to share that. God bless you guys. If you have any thoughts, hit me up. I did want to go in a little bit more detail, but I didn't want my video to be so long. Please like and subscribe. And if you agree or disagree, you're more than welcome to comment as well. And if you want to dialogue with me, have a dialogue on Instagram or Facebook, I'm open to that as well. God bless you guys. Peace, and I'll see you on the next one.